Hey there, Browncoatians. Today we got a review on the Yugoslavian Zastava M59 66A1, which was their version of the SKS. So real quick, a little bit of history on the SKS. It was designed by Sergei Simonov. It went into a very limited pre-production run in the spring of 1944. And this gun did see very, very limited actual field trials during World War II, or as the Soviets would have called it, the Great Patriotic War. It didn't start going into production until 1949 in Russia with the Soviet Union, and that only lasted until 1955. It was pretty quickly replaced by the AK-47. The Russians really wanted a rifle that had select fire, and the detachable magazine, I don't think that was necessarily a requirement, but it made it that much more attractive to them. And also you're going from a 10-round fixed box magazine to a 30-round magazine on the AK. But the big thing was the select fire. Now my understanding is they did experiment with some select fire versions of the SKS, but none of them ever went into full production. And I'll see a lot of people comment sometimes. One particular remark, I saw a guy say that he said he had a buddy of his that had a Russian SKS, and they forgot to remove the auto sear from it when they imported it, because whenever you pull the trigger, it'd empty all 10 rounds. And that might have been true as far as it emptying all 10 rounds when you pull the trigger. It's got nothing to do with it being fully automatic. They never were fully automatic for the actual ones they produced. The issue with this, and I'll touch on this real quickly, and it's the biggest issue with SKSs, is the pin. It does not have the firing pin spring. The issue with it, though, is that firing pin can get stuck forward. And what happens then is basically you kind of have like an open bolt setup where the firing pin is just sticking out. And usually I don't think it necessarily goes through all 10 rounds, but you're going to get a little quick burst before that firing pin gets pushed back. So whenever you're buying one of these, one of the first things you want to do, and I'm not going to bother doing a video on it. There are plenty of videos out there that have been done better than what I could do that go over this, but make sure that your firing pin channel is cleaned out and that firing pin actually rattles when you shake the bolt. That's just a real big thing I want to point out to anyone shooting this gun. This gun came to me caked in cosmoline. I cleaned it out very well. I've had no slam fires with it, but still just kind of out of paranoia, whenever I'm letting a friend of mine shoot this gun, I will be like, hey, there's a very small chance that this gun might slam fire. And I kind of tell them briefly what it is. And for the most part, it freaks them out more than it was worth the hassle. Because like I said, I keep this gun very clean. So just be aware of that. There is a fix. You can get I think they modify the firing pin, and then you get a spring. And it operates just like, the normal one. It's just it now has a spring in it. I thought about doing it with this SKS, but I don't let my gun sit around and get real dirty. I clean it, so that won't really be an issue. Also, I just try to like to keep them as original as possible without doing any modifications, even though that is a very minor one, and that's really not going to affect the way the gun shoots. I guess when I'm looking for if it does slam fire, I can be like, well, that's what would have happened, in the field or whatever, because that's how it was designed. So anyways, they only made it from 49 to 55, at least in the Soviet Union. A lot of other countries made them, but it didn't last very long because it got replaced by the AK-47. But this was the first full production rifle chambered in 7.62 by 39. So if you got an AK collection, I still feel an SKS is almost, a necessity for that collection, just because, this was the first production rifle that fired the, round that everyone knows the AK-47 for. Another thing I'll point out is I hear a lot of people say, oh, the SKS is just an older version or early model of the AK, but it's got a completely different operating system. Yeah, they're both gas powered, but so is an AR-15. The piston on this is not connected to the bolt carrier. The piston just floats in there. You got a little plunger in here that's got a spring on it. That piston goes back, hits the plunger. That plunger hits the bolt carrier, and that's what sends it back, rather than the piston being connected directly to the bolt carrier. Also, this does not have a rotating bolt like the AK-47. AKs were made with select fire. Obviously, the ones that that civilians here, at least in the US, have are semi-automatic only. That is one other difference. All of these were always semi-automatic. Like I said, there was no select fire ever put into production. And then obviously, you know, you have the difference with the magazines. So this is not an early AK. It's a different beast. Yes, it kind of looks similar with the vents on the handguards, especially comparing Yugoslavian AK-47, but it's just simply not an AK. So like I said, a lot of countries made this rifle. And then those countries sold them to a lot of other countries for the most part. So Albanian SKSs are the ones that look by far different. You can tell them by looking at it. The handguard here goes forward more. And the first time I saw one, I was like, ugh, that's the ugliest darn SKS I've ever seen. But if you guys watch my videos, what always happens when I see a gun and I say it's ugly? I usually end up falling in love with it. So I really want to get an Albanian. If you're curious, look them up. They're just very unusual looking. They have been imported into the US. They're not available as much as like the Chinese or the Russians or the Zastavas. But they are out there and they tend to be pretty beat up, which is unfortunate. Other countries that made them, of course, China. Everyone knows about the Chinese SKSs. China, as far as I know, and I might be wrong on this, I didn't really bother to look it up, but just thinking over the research I've done on this gun the last 2 days, and I've done more research on this gun, but I've been cramming the last 2 days for this video. But China, I think, is the only country that's ever actually made the SKS specifically for the commercial market, not really with the military in mind, and probably even more specifically the US market. A lot of those Chinese SKSs are actually specifically made for the civilian market. And there's other differences on the Chinese ones. They use more stamped parts compared to milled. Some of the barrels are pinned to the receiver, not all of them. Some of them are threaded into the receiver. But this one is kind of your standard, I guess, you know, compared to the Russian one. It's going to be all milled. The barrel's not pinned, which as far as I know, only China, I think China's the only country that, you know, kind of did little shortcuts like that. And I think that was because they're for the commercial market. I don't think any of those were ever really intended for the military. And China loved the SKS, by the way. They used it for a long time. East Germany also made some SKSs. Those are very sought after. And the easiest way to spot those is they've got a very unique belt loop set up in the butt sockets like the old German Mauser K98s. And that's the easiest way to spot those. North Korea also made several, as well as Vietnam. I don't think we have too much information on those, especially the North Korean ones. Romania also made them. And of course, Yugoslavia, which is what we have in front of us now. Yugoslavia they themselves did a very limited production run of 100 SKSs, and that was in 1961. And then it didn't go into full production until 1964, and that was what they called the model M59. Usually people, you know, they see the grenade launcher, they know that it makes it a Yugoslavian SKS. A lot of people don't realize, though, is Yugoslavia did make an SKS without the grenade launcher, and that is the M59. And that looks just completely normal, like your run-of-the-mill SKS. The only difference is it does not have a chrome-lined barrel, which if you're shooting corrosive ammo especially is going to be kind of a big deal. If you clean the gun shortly after you use it, you know, especially if you're not using corrosive ammo, it's really not an issue. Some might even argue it makes the gun more accurate. I'm not that good of a shot to even try to say, oh, a chrome-lined barrel is less accurate than one that's not. I'm more of a collector than a shooter. I definitely do shoot all of these, but yeah, I can't tell a difference. So they made the M59. They made that until 1967. Then in February of 67 is when they started making the 5966, which is what we have before us. And that was the addition of the grenade launcher. And I'm not sure what year they did. The 5966 did go through some kind of changes. This more specifically is a 5966A1. And what gives it that A1 designation is on the front sight here, we have a little flip up night sight. At one point that probably glowed. It no longer does. It's very old and still got a layer of Cosmo on it. And then also on the rear sight, it's got a little guy here that kind of flips up. There we go. And as you can see, that's got two little dots there. And you flip it down. This one's real freaking stubborn. Bear with me, folks, while we deal with technical difficulties. There we go. And yeah, so there it is with the rear sight flipped. The night sight flipped down, rather. Let me move these. I don't want to nick up. So yeah, did a review on this guy if you're curious real quick. This is another Zastava. It's an M88A. Did find out one thing since I made the video. Underneath a little slide lock retainer tab, whatever you want to call that, tells me what year it was made. And it was 1990 on that one. I did not include that in the video because at the time I did not know. And this is the M70, not the AK or the larger Tokarev M70A, but a little baby Tokarev that slightly mechanically different and fires, what do we got, 32? Yeah, 32. Good Lord, can't believe a brain fart in there. So this also comes with some accessories. This is your standard Yugoslavian SKS ammo pouch. You'll have these stripper clips jammed in there. Yes, this is a brass case round. I also did a review on this ammo. This ammo was specifically made for this SKS, the M67 ammo. You can also fit the boxes in there. I don't know whether they put them in the box or put them in the stripper clips. Obviously, stripper clips are going to be a little bit quicker to you know, pull out of there without having to mess with opening a box. If you're curious about this stuff, though, I did do a review on it. It's wonderful, fun ammo, and it's just cool because it was, you know, specifically designed for the SKS. Comes on a stripper clip, so this does have little lips there for you to insert a stripper clip. And these run really smooth. These stripper clips are easy to use. It's not like a Mosin, you know, where they can be rather stubborn. So there's the ammo for you. Let me get the pouch out of the way. Comes with, you know, your standard, you know, SKS AK style cleaning kit. Does have a little compartment in the buttstock. As you notice, this buttstock actually has a rubber pad, which helps kind of eat up some of the recoil due to the grenade launcher being on there. Although my understanding is you would not actually shoulder this, so I think that rubber pad was put on there basically to protect the buttstock of the gun, not really your shoulder. My understanding is they kind of, you know, put that down on the ground and hold that at your side, and well, I'll show you how the sights worked on that. But yeah, so I think that was more just protection for the buttstock rather than shouldering it. I have seen videos of people, you know, using dummy grenades, and you use blanks to propel those, and they shoulder them. You know, I have no clue how hard it kicks, but if you decide to buy one of these and you want to shoot some dummy grenades, I'm putting that on you for your own research to figure out what's safe there. Also, it comes with a little brass oil can, which I think is pretty cool looking. That's brass. They also do make these with plastic ones. I imagine the plastic was later on when they started using that. But it has a little other pouch here on the sling. I'll show you later. So that's what that is there. There we go. Free her up a little bit. So here's the leather pouch. And your little cleaning kit goes in there. You can also hold a couple rounds of 7.62 by 39. Kind of handy. This one came with a leather sling, which is pretty ugly. But I'm definitely keeping it because it's authentic to this rifle. They did come with kind of the more standard looking canvas style sling with the leather tabs. Once again, I think they did the all leather kind of earlier on. I think they switched to the canvas later. Sorry, I lost track of where I was at and was going over the little differences. So, 5966A1, you have the flip up front and rear night sights. Now the Yugoslavians did have a clip-on night sight that could be used on your standard M59 or 5966, you know, without the A1 or without the night sights. Another change they did, and I'm not sure what year they did this, but you got these little ports on their grenade launcher here. I imagine they're thinking, you know, kind of also make it a muzzle brake. This probably does absolutely nothing for the recoil, and I think they realized that, and they stopped drilling those holes in there. Probably just save a little bit of money and time, because I probably didn't do anything. I will say I was aware of that fact when I ordered this gun from Classic Firearms. I did pay the hand select, and in the comments, you know, I put in there, please give me one with the ported grenade launcher. Now, whether they read that and were like, okay, we'll do you a solid, or just dumb luck, but I got one with the ports. Which my thinking was, you know, if I get one with a grenade launcher, I might as well get one that has a chance of also being a muzzle brake, right? That was my thinking. A lot of people do remove these grenade launchers. One, it adds a lot of weight to this SKS. This is a very, very heavy SKS. So a lot of people will take this off, that relieves a lot of weight, and they'll get rid of the ladder grenade launcher sight as well. Fun note, there's videos on this as well. You can see it's just kind of pinned in here. Once you remove this, it's threaded, 14x1 left-hand threads. So you can use any AK-47 muzzle brake. You know, it's the right caliber, and it's the right threads and everything. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, there's no detent, so you're gonna, you know, I don't know if you put a crush washer in there or what, but you'll have to fix that brake on there. But it will take fairly easily, once you get that off, that is, any standard AK-47 muzzle brake, if you want to do something like that. While we're on that topic of bubbification, I hate bubbification. You guys know I always talk about how I like to keep my guns original. But there's always an exception. The SKS, you know, more specifically the 5966, in my opinion, as long as you didn't get one of those ones that come with like the log book and it tells you exactly how many rounds have been shot through the gun, I think those were awesome. Would have loved to have gotten one of those. As long as it's not one of those, I think these are perfectly okay to bubbify. There's enough of them out there. I mean, they do have historical value, but I don't want to say they weren't involved in any major conflicts, because if you know anything about Yugoslavia, they went through a hell of a civil war in the 90s. But once again, this wasn't really their frontline weapon. If you watch any documentaries on everything that happened over there, which I've watched a bunch of them, and I still can't really grasp completely on who was on whose side, and yeah, it is a big mess. But usually you saw the Zastava NPAP AKs. And technically I do believe this is an NPAP, but it's just NPAP SKS, or a PAP SKS. Very rarely, though, will you see the Yugoslavian SKSs. There was a few clips I saw them using 5966s, and that was like right after I got this gun, so of course got all giddy. But these were not necessarily a heavily used frontline weapon. So I have completely lost my train of thought. Where are we going? Okay, so they made 1,000 of these in 64. February of 67 is when they started making the 5966. And like I said, I'm not sure what year they switched to the A1, or if, you know, they were making the ones with night sights and ones without night sights simply at the same time. And I have no clue what year they changed the grenade launcher. I had a ton of material saved for this review, and unfortunately I've moved since then. I've lost some of it. But besides the ports and the grenade launcher, this, I believe, changed like ever so slightly the style. I mean, you'd have to put them side by side to really see it. But the grenade launcher, the design did change somewhat over the years. For the most part, the 5966s that have been imported into the US, from what I have seen, it seems like almost all of them are actually A1s. They have the night sights. It seems like they made fewer without, or maybe it was just fewer that got imported. I'm not really sure what the case is there. So oddly, if you find one of these and it doesn't have night sights, I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, that one's now worth $20 more. But I'm saying I think there's fewer of them here from what I've seen, at least right now. There was a point in time when the 5966 was rather uncommon in the U.S. Not many were imported. All that we had over here was just the standard 59. But several years ago, the U.S. market got completely flooded with the 5966. So now whenever anyone says, you know, Yugoslavian SKS, most people are immediately picturing the grenade launcher. Because right now those are by far the most abundant that we have here. So they started making the 5966 in 1967, and that production stopped in 1989. So they made these for quite a while. I'm not sure how long China made the SKS, or if they're still making them for Canada. I have no clue. So I think they're probably one of the last countries that made the SKS. I have a feeling China probably still beat them out, though. And these were produced... Okay, guys, are you ready? It's time for me to try to pronounce more words that I can't. These were produced at Produzis 44, or what basically translates to Enterprise Facility 44, from my understanding. And that is in the city of... Oh, crap, here we go again. First of all, I'd like to apologize to anyone from or living in the former Yugoslavian nations. But it was in the city of Krajuvec, which I believe is now in Serbia. Well, yeah, it's got to be in Serbia now. So I apologize to the people of Krajuvec for mispronouncing their, I'm sure, beautiful city. That's the other thing that's really sad about the Civil War that was going on over there. I mean, I was really young at the time, but I vaguely remember seeing news footage, and it was just kind of a bizarre, these beautiful, European-looking, quaint little villages just completely devastated by Civil War, artillery fire, genocide. I mean, it was just horrible, and it's just kind of bizarre. And in case any of you are wondering if I have any cultural connection to any of those countries, because I've been doing a lot of videos on the Zastavas, I do not, but I do read. And this book really kind of pushed me to start grabbing more of the Zastava weapons. And it goes over the Civil War. Actually doesn't touch on like specific weapons if you're looking for something like that. That's not what this is at all. But it's just kind of I believe he was English. He had relatives that were from the area, and just kind of wanted to see what war was like. And he was a journalist, and or at least that's what he was going there under. Was that he was a journalist, and just kind of his experience as an outsider, really experiencing that war. And it was just it was horrible. So, anyways, highly recommend that book if you're into this kind of stuff. So, it was made in that city. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it again, because I'm sure I've already pissed off enough people of that region. 1953, the facility expanded into a larger complex, and that is now known as Zavad Slovenia Zastava. A lot of times you'll see CZ on different of the Zastava logos, and that's where that comes from, is that that C word that I mispronounced earlier. At least I can say Zastava, right? Or at least I think I am. Who knows? So that's when it became Zastava, from my understanding. It was that old Facility 44. But and that translates to Red Banner or Red Flag Works. And that really expanded the facility, and they made all kinds of stuff. Like anything and everything was made at this facility. And this is the coolest part, because I'm also a bit of a car nerd. And if you're familiar with like one of the most hated cars of all time, known as the Yugo, well, big surprise, it was made in Yugoslavia. But not only was it made in Yugoslavia, it was made at that plant. From my understanding, the same plant that made this rifle produced that shitzer of a horrible car. So I thought that was kind of cool. And that facility was actually bombed by NATO in 1998. My understanding is they are still in some production, but I don't think they ever regrew or fully expanded. And they may have just moved locations since that bombing. So I don't think they ever fully recovered in what they were able to produce at that time. So that's kind of unfortunate, but, worse up. Oops, let's drop my notes. So there are actually 4 different Zastava models. As I said earlier, it started with the M59, then the M5966, the M5966, which is just the addition of the night sights. And apparently there was also even a sniper model. I'm not sure if that got a different barrel, What was changed on that? As far as I can really tell, the definite thing that was changed, my understanding was given like an AK style side scope mount, and it used the, what was it called? The Zrak 89B scope. So they did make a sniper model. I'm sure that was probably a pretty limited run there, but that is out there. As far as I know, none of those have been imported, and if they have, I'm sure I can't afford it. One interesting thing, Zastava, at least as far as their AKs, they've sold this to a ton of other countries. They even set up a facility. Not necessarily they set up a facility. They sold their blueprints to Iraq, though, and all of the Iraqi-made AKs are actually, paid for legal copies of the Zastava AK, because the Zastava AKs aren't true copies of the actual Kalashnikov AKs. I'll get on that here in a little bit. But Uruguay purchased several shipments of SKSs during the 60s and 70s, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So the Yugoslavian SKSs, I don't think were ever popular in the Middle East, but Uruguay, as well as some other African nations and rebels and whatnot, purchased these from Yugoslavia. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And they also got a different wood stock. I think it was teak wood to help with the humid conditions. As far as I know, none of those have been imported, probably never will be. Now, like the Russians, the Yugoslavians also did experiment with a select fire SKS. And also, like the Russians, the Yugoslavians, for whatever reason, decided they just didn't want to mess with that. So they did experiment with that themselves. Now, the M59, I believe I said earlier, the main difference between that and your standard SKS, it didn't have a chrome line barrel. Yugoslavia either doesn't have any chrome deposits or they have very little, so it's very expensive for them to do that. And I guess I'm sure they push maintenance a little bit more because the ammo they use that I showed you earlier, that is corrosive ammo. And pretty much all of their rifles do not have chrome lined barrels. Some of the AKs that are chambered in 5.56 that they made do have chrome lined barrels for whatever reason, but I'm not sure of that. So the 59, the biggest difference, it doesn't have the chrome lined barrels. The 59.66, like I said, has the addition of the grenade launcher and the flip up sights here. So how this would work, if you wanted to fire a grenade, first off, I meant to open this before I started this video. Whoop. You'll have to use a blank. That was accident. I didn't even realize that. This is made by PPU, which is based out of Serbia, which is where this guy came from, or modern day country that would be called whatever. But I'm sure you guys know what a blank looks like. Now, my understanding is these did use special blanks for firing grenades. I've came across sources that said it was an underpowered blank. I've came across sources that say it was a high-powered blank. So once again, if you decide you want to fire a dummy grenade, just look into it, do some research. There are several videos on YouTube of people doing it, so it appears to be something that you can do and safely. So you'd load your blank. This little funky knob here, you notice that gas block looks completely different. You just flip that up. You won't be able to get the slider side up if you don't. What that is, that's a little gas shutoff valve. So we are no longer semi-automatic. This is essentially a straight pull bolt action kind of right now. And you flip up your ladder sights. And I forget which side is which, but one side is anti-personnel, the other side anti-vehicle or whatever. So you'd have two different, oh, that's fuzzy. You'd have two different style of grenades. And I believe that overall they had a total of 4 different grenades that they would attach on here. But you'd use that as your rear sight. And then you'd use the tip of the grenade as the front sight. So that's how that worked. Front sight pretty much is like your standard AK or any standard SKS. As you can see, and I've cleaned this a million times, guys, this thing just keeps sweating, cosmoing, and grabs up all of the freaking lint. Good Lord, I wiped this down before I started. It's disgusting. So that's how your rifled grenades would work. And like I said, I've read that you wouldn't shoulder them. That was not the intent. But you kind of, make a small hole in the dirt with your foot or something. Put the buttstock in there. Hold this kind of at your hip. And then aim that way. But it is kind of nice that it has that little rubber butt pad on there. Not that this gun kicks very hard, especially with as heavy as it is. But that's just kind of nice. And this one, the 5966 and 5966A1, they also do not have a chrome-lined barrel. So if you buy one of these, just be aware of that. Clean it out shortly after you shoot the gun, especially if you're using corrosive ammo. Another thing, make sure you clean this out. If you buy one of these, you start doing some research, you're going to quickly come across how many times people have had to replace this valve in there because they didn't clean it. And this thing is super easy to clean. You remove your gas, why am I wanting to say piping? Housing here. Gas piston housing. Flip that up, and then you push it forward. And you see that little opening there. You can then pull this plunger up, and there's a spring in it, and the valve comes out. I mean, it's really easy to take out clean. It's just I think a lot of people forget about it. So don't forget about it. All right, where did I leave off? Blah, blah, blah. So if you are looking at getting one of these and you've got an option between a Chinese SKS or a Russian SKS, the advantage over a Chinese one, especially if you're looking at one with a lot of stamped materials, is this one's all milled. It's heavy duty. Not saying that the Chinese one wouldn't last with the stamped parts, but this is just beefier than the other. The downside, obviously, is it's going to make it heavier, especially with the grenade launcher on there. It adds a lot of weight, and I will say, after a couple mag loads, this thing is just, you're kind of tired of holding it. Doesn't have the chrome-lined barrel. The other ones do have chrome-lined barrels. I'm pretty sure all the Chinese ones do. There might be some that don't. Not sure on that. But that's really the biggest drawback of the Yugos is no chrome-lined barrel. Some people just absolutely hate that. Other people, it doesn't bug them. Some prefer it. So that's just all personal preference there. So part of the reason, the other interesting thing about this grenade launcher is most Cold War era comm block nations, which most people throw Yugoslavia into that, those would use the, where did I draw down, 20 millimeter? Yeah, the 20 millimeter, sorry about the camera work, guys, Warsaw Pact style grenade, rifle grenades. But this is a 22 millimeter NATO styled rifle grenade launcher. Tito, which was the president of Yugoslavia, he broke off relations with USSR in 1948. Yugoslavia, and anyone correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a historian, I'm an internet weekend historian. But Yugoslavia was a communist nation, but they were never part of the Soviet Union, which, I didn't know until I started buying up these Zastavas and doing some research on them. They were never part of the USSR. They got the SKS, kind of sound like the Russians or Soviet Union said, here you can have these blueprints, trying to get on their good side. But Tito was just like, nah, wasn't having it. And that's why the Zastava AKs have a slightly different design to them than the Russian ones, is because Russia would not give them the rights, the copyright, I guess, which is kind of weird to think about it, to make those rifles. So they made them with just enough different changes, where it was kind of considered its own design. Let's see. Another thing that this does have, and I've seen them pop up, I've almost got them, but once again, I'm like, I need to quit filling up my junk drawer with random stuff. They did make a blank firing adapter that would go over the grenade launcher, and that would help build up the pressure so that, with this being semi-automatic, it could still cycle. So you will see those out there. Make sure you don't fire a live round when it's on there, or a live round if you're doing a dummy grenade. That's just really dumb. Don't do that. wood grain comes up occasionally on these too. And that's one thing I noticed with these. For the most part, in my opinion, the wood grain is just not the prettiest. I mean, it's not bad. It actually has grain in it. I've seen wood stocks that, you know, there's no grain to them whatsoever. But these have just kind of almost like a straight line grain. And I've seen several places mention about how Zastava specifically cut the wood at a certain angle to give most of their rifles this grain. Like I said, most of them do. Some of them have a prettier kind of looking grain. But that was it was supposed to be like the most optimal strength of the wood is when you cut it in this way, you know, against or with the grain or whatever. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I've never really heard of any issues with SKSs having weak wood stocks. So I don't know if, you know, the first wood stocks that the Yugoslavians were using were having issues, if they, you know, didn't have a lot of access to high quality wood or what that was that inspired them to do this. But that's the story on that. Well, I've got her flipped over. Here. I don't want to do that upside down. This one is a numbers matching. Most of these are. I got this, when was it? I got it from Classic Firearms in May of 2006. This one was rated in the very good to excellent condition, and I did pay $470 for that. And I think I included the hand-pick fee on that price. I'm not sure. Looking back at the price, because I do write down the prices that I pay for guns. I just kind of keep track of everything. I was thinking I paid $400 to $450, so I was surprised to see that $470. So I'm not sure if that includes a hand-picked. It might not. This thing was in beautiful shape, other than being completely caked in cosmoline. And looking at the moving parts, you know, on the bolt and everything, it wasn't brand new, but it had been fired very little. I've put more wear on those internal parts than what it had when I first got the gun. And to be honest with you, I haven't really shot this a whole bunch. One thing that kills me is that, isn't that horrible? And if you look, pretty sure the neighboring SKS's charging handle dug into the stock there. I think that's what that is. And there's some compression marks, I think, on the other side. That's also the same deal. Which is unfortunate, yeah, like right here. I think kind of the same thing happened. The unboxing video that Classic Firearms did for this, which was the batch I got it out of, all of the crates were marked with the Slovenian government crest, like their little military emblem, whatever. Not this. That's Serbia. So I thought that was kind of cool, because I now know, because when you're getting a Zastava SKS, you can't say, oh, the last government to have this was Yugoslavia, because it most likely wasn't. That country broke up into a bunch of countries. It could have come out of Croatia or Serbia, or there's times that existed briefly and no longer exist. I'm not even going to get into the whole list because I missed some, or God knows mispronounce. So that's kind of cool. I really like that I know that this was last in Slovenia. So that's pretty cool. I really was happy that they pointed that out when they did that opening, the little crate opening video. And also, you know, they're pulling guns out. A lot of them had the original manual that even had like how many rounds were fired on this date. Those ones demanded a premium, obviously. And by the time I got around to deciding I did want one, those were sold out anyways. So that was pretty cool. And I remember they did open one crate where all these SKSs were just piled in there. And it's like, you know what? This is probably the damn crate that mine came out of with that chunk from the charging handle. But other than that, this gun's been pretty good. I haven't had any issues other than the first time I fired it with my mouth open, and I thought I got all the cosmoline out, but I didn't. I got a mouthful of cosmoline, and cosmoline does not taste very good. Don't do that. And as you can see, this is still sweating. I bought this, what did I say, May of 2016. And I mean, I haven't shot it a whole bunch, therefore I haven't, you know, repeatedly cleaned it a ton. But I mean, I've shot it a fair amount, and I've cleaned it, especially when I first got it. I cleaned the bejesus out of it. I think I cleaned it 3 times before I even reassembled it. It was really dirty. One thing I will say, this is, you know, I'm sure y'all are somewhat familiar with SKS. It's got a cool little interesting safety. Probably one of the crappiest triggers I have on any gun. It is just super grimy, super gritty. And once again, I'm sure there's still a bunch of cosmetic in that. This whole trigger mechanism pops out. I've cleaned it out very well. Overshooting it, I haven't really noticed it get any better. SKS triggers just aren't the best. And there are some videos out there on how to help improve those triggers. Once again, you know, I keep things original. If it's got a crap trigger, well, it's got a crap trigger. That's the way it's going to be. But that's just how I like to do it. Another thing that's interesting on the Yugo SKSs is this bayonet. This is the longest bayonet of any of the SKSs. Coming in at, what was it? It was like right around 11 inches. So, yeah, if you're a guy that's insecure and likes to have a big bayonet and show it off, well, this is the SKS for you. While we're talking about big bayonets, okay, so I did a thing. I like to keep my guns original, and I bought this, what was it, May of 2016. There were some elections going on. I was nervous, lots of talk of no longer quote-unquote high-capacity magazines, and I bought one of those. And then I bought one of those. So these are, for the most part, hated in the SKS community. Some people love them. This is a very popular gun to bubbify. And a lot of people hate them because they say they don't work. There's also a metal version of the 30 round, which looks a lot better with the wood stock. But for the most part, it seems people have a lot of issues with those. The 31 round mag I have here is Pro Mag. I had to do 0 modifications to the gun. It's a very tight fit. And I didn't use that much before I decided to go back to the original. I probably fired close to 100 rounds. I did a couple full mags. No issues. I think like once or twice on the last round, the bolt didn't lock back like it should have. And same story on this guy. This one is a Tapco 20 rounder. Now this one looks a little bit better in there because it's not as huge and gangly as that. It still kind of looks like it's plastic and wood. That just looks goofy. Same story on this though. I had 0 issues, and once or twice it didn't lock open on the last mag. There's different things to do. Some of these SKSs do come with AK mags. China made some that were like that. People will take a piece like this and like permanently attach it in there, and we'll use AK mags that way. I've heard good and kind of mostly bad things about that. It seems like they're very picky on the magazine they use. I held one at a gun shop, and out of curiosity, I took the mag out. That was a mistake. The guy that worked there had to tinker with it for like 15 minutes before he can get it locked back in there. I was like, yeah, I don't want that. Let's see, did I going over anything I didn't touch on? Oh yeah, this has the G code. I believe it was G. Yep, G code. Yeah, there's my neighbor's car alarm. You can look up online that letter prefix is going to be the year. G is 1970, so this was made in 1970. So we know 1970 they're still putting the ports on the grenade launcher. And that year they made 58,000 of these. So yeah, not rare by any means. Trying to think, what all did I not touch on? Oh, got most of my information from this book. Obviously also just looking around online, watching a bunch of videos. A lot of the videos on this gun, it's mostly just people shooting them. Not really going over the history, so that's what I was trying to do with this video. I try to bring you videos on guns that either don't have a lot of info out there on them or misinformation. This one's got a ton of videos on it, but just not a whole lot of history. I know my history I gave you was kind of broken, but hopefully I kind of gave you a little more insight. Make you curious about it. Do your own damn research. It's very interesting and sad part of history and everything that happened over there. I guess it's morbid. That's kind of part of my love of these guns. So yeah, that's about it. Oh, real quick, I know a bunch of people are probably curious. The 30 round mag, and I've shown pictures of it when I had the 30 round mag, and more than once that I have someone be like, huh, good job, idiot, now you can't open your bayonet. This bayonet does clear. I know it's not in there properly, but it will clear with that mag in there. It's kind of close, but yeah, it has no issues doing that. So if you are dead set on getting a 30 round mag and want to keep that bayonet on there, you do have the option. You will see a bunch of these come in with like really long flash hiders installed. My understanding is a lot of these were imported. And once again, I'm really curious, especially you folks out in California. My understanding is that you cannot sell these in California with that grenade launcher. So they had to change, they would take these off, and for the most part put a really long flash hider on there. And they look pretty cool, you know. And they'll usually take these ladder sights off. So if you see any of those, my understanding that's what that's all about. It's not like a, you know, some weird special edition or necessarily sporterized, or it's kind of forced sporterized, or rather neutering of a gun to make it legal to sell in the States. So that's kind of sad. Also, kind of interesting thing about this cutoff switch, like I said, once you flip it up, you pull the trigger, it goes bang, but this will not cycle. It completely cut off from giving any gas to that piston. So you just pull it straight back and release, and then you fire. So it's just kind of like a straight pull bolt action. I was kind of curious at the shooting range, you know, so I flipped it up. I mean, I wasn't shooting grenades or nothing, but I just kind of wanted to shoot through, you know, 10 rounds. And I just wanted to see if, you know, me manually cycling that each time, if it was going to make it a little more likely to get a failure to feed or something like that. Didn't have any of those issues. One thing I will say, it kicks a lot more because you aren't bleeding off any of that gas. You know, that whole motion there eats up some of the recoil. So like the first round I shot, I was kind of like paused for a second. And I'm like, no, this is the same ammo I was shooting. I'm like, oh, duh, cut off the gas. I'm feeling more of the recoil. But the thing that makes me wonder, I'm really curious about what you guys think. So with that being cut off, we are maintaining more pressure. We're losing, you know, we're not losing pressure to cycle the bolt. So we've got more pressure behind the bullet when that's cut off, right? Maybe pushing at a slightly faster speed. Would that make it more accurate? So if you're someone that's wanting to make like a really good, you know, kind of a long range SKS or whatever, that might be an appealing feature to you, is to switch it to that. I'm really curious if you get a little more accuracy out of it. Every time I've shot this, I've been at the indoor range, so I'm not shooting at any great distance. And once again, I'm not the greatest shot, but if I ever get a chance to shoot this long range, I'm definitely going to play around with that and try to do a comparison to see if I can get any noticeable differences there. And I'm curious about what you guys think on that too. Another advantage to that is a lot of people will put scopes on these. And I've seen people make like little shell deflectors. So if you're concerned about your scope getting dinged up or whatever, and you don't have a shell deflector, once you flip that, manually cycling it, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be flying up as much, you know, as it would with the semi-automatic with the gas opened up there. So just a little bit of food for your thought on that if you're looking into one of these. Also, if you're just wanting an SKS, I mean, these are, as you know, the by far the most common out on the market right now. A lot of people love them. A lot of people hate them. I'm going to be honest, guys, that grenade launcher on the end, I think looks effing cool. Some people hate it. Some people think it looks ugly. I think it's sexy, kind of quasi-steampunky. You know, we got all these little doodads. We got night sights, gas cutoff, this whole little ladder mechanism. You know, little absorber butt pad. You know, lots of cool features that your standard SKS doesn't have. And I'm a nerd, and I think that's cool. So anyhow, that is my review on the 1970 coming out of Slovenia Zastava 5966A1. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and have yourselves a great day. Stay shiny.